I've Well, hello to everyone. Good morning for those for whom that applies, and good afternoon to others. I'm Courtney Fingar, joining you from London, and I'm a consultant focused on foreign direct investment. And I'm absolutely delighted to be moderating this webinar that is being brought to you from the World Trade Centers Association in collaboration with Araújo Ibarra International Business Consultants. And I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about these organizations. It is, to me, an incredibly opportune time to be having a discussion about free zones, given all the volatility that we're seeing in the world. And I was planning to say that already. And then over the weekend, of course, and in recent days, we've seen an explosion of violence and volatility and uncertainty that's actually impacting some of the world's major free zones hubbed in the Gulf states. So it's even more important that we have a conversation about the role that free zones can play amidst this very uncertain and slightly difficult world in which we're doing business in. And World Trade Centers, as strategic hubs, have an increasingly critical role to play in shaping global trade and investment flows and helping kind of calm some of this uncertainty. So just to kind of bring all those pieces together, I will introduce to you our speakers. They are Martín Ibarra, who's the CEO of Araújo Ibarra International Business Consultants that I mentioned, and really probably needs no introduction because Martín is really the godfather of free zones, not only in the Americas and globally, but probably the leading expert, I would say, in the world on free zones. So it's always a pleasure to pick Martín's brain and hear what he has to say. Joining Martín will be Crystal Eden, Executive Director for Member Services of the World Trade Centers Association. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
And now, just to maybe set the scene for us a little bit, Martín, I mean, mentioned some of this volatility that we're seeing, but that is a more recent phenomenon that sort of follows an evolution that we saw in global value chains that really was kicked off and accelerated by COVID-19 and has carried on to this day. So can you talk us through a little bit that evolution as you've seen it and the impact that this has had on international trade and commerce?
Thank you, Courtney, for a very warm introduction. Thank you so much. Well, in the last maybe 6-7 years, it's a lot of facts that change dramatically the international trade. First, Mr. Donald Trump, number one. Mr. Donald Trump, number one, declared the trade war to China and begin to charge additional fares to this country, and he's created this movement that the name is nearshoring, or more or less friendshoring. And because that tax $700 billion flow out of China and placed in other countries, in Vietnam, in Taiwan, in Mexico. If you see the 10 countries who receive more nearshoring activity, the champion was Mexico. $200 billion in the last 7 years. And because that, there are a lot of movement of process, the machinery have to move of countries, and then came the COVID-19, and the COVID-19 stopped immediately the international trade. And that combination of Mr. Trump 1 and COVID-19 make big changes for multinational companies who didn't want to depend on only one provider in a very far country. For that reason, nearshoring was aligned with the nearshoring countries to make business with the friends and business with the friends who are located very near the consumer and the producer. And for that reason, the free zones in the world begin to be very useful, because the free zone was the places that you can move machinery, inventory, procedure without taxes and without procedure very, very fast in a very friendly way. For that reason, most of the 5,000 free zones around the world increase a lot their activity. And you have another motive is the reduction of the CO2. when a product have to fly or have to move 1,000, 2,000 kilometers, it's completely different than the raw material has to go to the opposite part of the world and then to be processed and came again with another part of the world. It means in some cases the procedure has to go 40,000 kilometers to be transformed and to came again to the consumer. For that reason, you are a very big expert in international flows of investment, and you can see how the investment follow the trade and how this changing of trade is changing a lot the flows of investment and how is the big of the free zone in this moment. For that reason, the free zone are the best instrument in the world to allow the company to this new mechanism of international trade. By the way, the UNCTAD, the UN Forum for Developing Countries, declared the free zone and the special economic zone as the best tool for the recovery of the country after COVID-19.
Great. Thank you, Martin. And one of the, I guess, ground level impacts of these transformations that you mentioned was in the physical places that companies locate. So whether that's within industrial or logistics zones or free zones, can you talk us through the implications of these transformations in the composition of real estate assets that support international trade?
Yes. Before the pandemic, the offices and the buildings of offices was very, very important. Of course, today still are, but the new places that are required for the company for logistics, for the cold change, for the new process of production is most important still. You can see a country like Mexico, for example, that even during pandemic, they build more than 3 million square meters per year. The industrial park in Mexico have an occupancy of 98% in this moment. No one square meter. In Colombia, the same. Also, the free zone in Colombia are complete full. I mean, you can see in Dominican Republic, there are building new zones and there are adding new spaces for the current zone. And you can see for that reason, it's very important how coordinate the demand of new industrial spaces and logistic spaces, e-commerce spaces, because the e-commerce has a share now near 20% of the international trade, and that the e-commerce need a new kind of facility. But in the other hand, you have new business, the business of the future, Courtney. For example, data center. The data center, you know, the artificial intelligence needs a lot of data centers. Today, we have more than 11,000 data centers in the world. And maybe in the next 10 years, the number of data centers is going to duplicate. And now you have free zone for data centers, and now are cloud free zones. There are free zones. The criteria is not the container, is not the machinery, is not to be near the port. The criteria is to be near the electricity source, to have a very strong and redundant energy supply, and to have all the facilities to be secure. And we are in the presence of the same as hydrogen. The hydrogen is one of the material of the future. Now you have hydro-free zones. That means free zone, the boat for hydrogen. And you can see today how many free zones want to be a World Trade Center, and many World Trade Center want to add his real estate value proposition, create new free zones exactly for catch for the new opportunities that the international market are bringing today.
Thank you. This is probably a great moment to bring in Crystal. So, Crystal, I'd love to have your perspective on the relevance of free trade zones in today's regulatory and trade environment, and tell us also a little bit about World Trade Centers and how they sort of intersect with free zones, maybe the differences that between the two, and what kind of perhaps growing interest you see in the World Trade Center model?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Courtney. Before I respond to that, I wanted to take a moment, as you said, to acknowledge the recent events in the Middle East. You know, we have a number of our members there, and our thoughts are with the communities and their families. When we look at today's global trade environment, we obviously are going through many structural changes. Recent conversations, including those in Munich, kind of focused around economic resilience and reducing global supply chain vulnerabilities after COVID and with the current changes geopolitically. Businesses in this context are really looking for predictability and diversification. Free trade zones offer that operational clarity and infrastructure stability, and really help to move trade regionally at a rapid rate. When we look at kind of how trade runs, it really is the intersection of both policy and relationships. So when you ask kind of how World Trade Centers fit into that model, global networks like the WTCA facilitate the move of trade. So the policy creates framework, and the free trade zones create that framework and that stability, that capacity for trade, and global networks give that connectivity and create the flow so that it travels across borders. So when we look at the function of free trade zones and the relevance with the World Trade Center model, they really are complementary platforms because they work hand in hand. When we look kind of at the future of trade and where we are today, those connections and the ability to reduce friction and strengthen competitiveness is where businesses and local networks are headed.
And what kind of, this is, Martín may want to also weigh in on this, but what kind of value do you see the World Trade Center brand adding, if we're thinking of it in terms of a real estate asset, compared to the value provided by just being under the umbrella of a free zone regime? And how perhaps are these two things complementary?
Courtney, I didn't realize before know the World Trade Center activity, how the power of the brand means for the real estate. First, because the international recognition for a multinational company, the World Trade Center is the best real estate brand in the world. When you take a taxi in the city and say, please carry me to the World Trade Center, you don't need to give the address to the driver. All the people know where the World Trade Center is. For that reason, the brand gives to the real estate who has its name, 20% of faster collocation, even in rent or in sales, and even the price goes up. It's a main value proposition. But in the other hand, the free zone have another complementary proposition. When you have a real estate where you have a special tax regime, is considered out of the custom territory. The building don't have to pay VAT over the material. The machinery do not have to pay custom taxes and VAT. The stocks are free of taxes, and especially in a very easy environment to do business. For that reason, the free zone has a 40% of share of international trade, because there are places to do business when you go to another country, to another region, to another continent. But if you mix both, you mix the concept of World Trade Center, who has is powerful, and the incentives of the free zone, is a magic combination. It's a fantastic combination, because it is an unbeatable value proposition in front of others. Real estate do not have both advantages. For that reason, we know some cases of very successful World Trade Centers that now are free zones, or free zone who want to be World Trade Center, because the main objective of the World Trade Center is to create investment and trade. That is exactly the main objective of the free zone. There is a concurrent objectives. And you can see different examples around the world that that are reading very, very carefully these new these new tendencies.
Thank you. And Crystal, first of all, feel free to pick up on or elaborate on anything that Martin has said. But I've also wanted to pose to you, Martin talked a bit at the start about the new generation of free zones, so channeling trends like AI, but getting involved in data centers and hydrogen and new sources of energy. How do you see that new generation of free zones intersecting with the World Trade Center model?
Yeah, I think Martin really kind of succinctly put it. There's a synergy between the two free trade zones and World Trade Centers. When we're looking today at how free trade zones are evolving to fit the new trade ecosystem with logistics hubs and data center facilitation and movement of goods, I think what fits well with the World Trade Center model is that we are not a franchising organization. And so World Trade Centers evolve just as free trade zones do. World Trade Centers are a flexible model that serve their local economic ecosystems. And so we have a number of World Trade Centers that, like those, World Trade Center Savannah, that is part of that foreign trade zone here in the United States. We have World Trade Center Montevideo, that is an exceptional example of a free trade zone. We have others that are housed within foreign trade zones or free trade zones, like the World Trade Center San Luis Potosi, which is an industrial hub, logistics hub. So as we look at kind of how the two pair together, the World Trade Center really provides that institutional credibility and that global connectivity to facilitate I would say, the advancement of these changes in trade, of moving more towards data and information trade or logistics hubs.
Right. And when working across different geographies, markets, and even sectors, flexibility is really a key point. How flexible is the World Trade Center model, and how do you apply it in so many very different places in the world?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. We have been around, the WTCA has been around for over 55 years now. And so, as Martín mentioned, we really, our core is a real estate model, but we've evolved over the years. And so our members offer not only real estate facilities, but also trade development services, global business ecosystems around business clubs, conference and exhibition venues. So as we look at kind of how flexible, how the model flexes with each geographic market, each World Trade Center operator is able to see what their local ecosystem needs and hone in on that and change their models dependent on that. So right now, what we've seen over the last few years since the pandemic, we have a number of, our real estate players in the World Trade Center ecosystem that have shifted where they're putting their focus, whether they're changing from classic commercial real estate models to more of the live, work, play model, really helping to serve the broader community, whether or not you are a tenant. They still give that world-class address as a World Trade Center, to where if you're in a taxi, you don't have to say what the address is. You say World Trade Center Montevideo, and everyone knows where you're going to. But they're flexing the model to really evolve with the growing ecosystems that they serve.
Yeah, I had wanted to ask you about that, specifically about hybrid and flexible working and how that is really changing the real estate model within World Trade Centers and free zones in general.
Yeah, I think, we've seen, depending on the market that you're in, our members in China are functioning very differently than the World Trade Centers in Brazil right now, right? So they all function according to their local markets. Here in New York City, where I'm based, real estate and commercial real estate is definitely different than it was pre-pandemic. What we're seeing in terms of hybrid models really depends on the market that you're in. A lot of people are back to work. What we're hearing from a lot of our members, I was in India late last year visiting a number of our World Trade Centers, and a number of them are at close to full occupancy with people coming into their buildings on a daily basis. Other places are more with flex models where they serve their local markets. So it really, I think, if I were to sum it up, where we're at right now, you can see that people are flexing and much more innovative in how they're serving their local businesses versus staying in that static model that we may have seen pre-pandemic and decades ago.
Great, thank you. And I'm interested to continue a little bit on geographies. And Martin, where do you see, are there areas in the world where you see potential for more free zones, more World Trade Centers? Or are there undertapped and underserved areas where you think these models could really be beneficial?
Well, Courtney, as I told in the beginning of this fantastic conversation, we are in presence of a regionalization of trade. You see, for example, and in countries like Canada, I received the other day a call of World Trade Center Winnipeg. Say, Martin, we want to have a free zone regime in Canada. We don't have, because we need a diversification of products, and we need a diversification of market, and we need to use our powerful brand World Trade Center to create these new environments around free zones. And you have, for example, now Mercosur is signing an agreement with the European Union of trade, very important. Maybe in 1 year or 2 years will be in operation. They changed dramatically the legislation of free trade zones that they used to have. For example, now in Paraguay, they are creating a new free trade zone in a corridor that is going to join Brazil to the Pacific through Brazil, Paraguay, Chile, and Peru, and will be a chain of free zones, and one of those will be World Trade Center. By the way, is the owner of the current World Trade Center in Asunción, and that will be agro free zone, and maybe the train that is going to join Brazil and Chile will be a free trade zone. The whole train, the same that many trains in the world, like the train who go between Balboa and Colón in Panama City, or the Trans-Siberian train to join Korea to Germany, going up to Russia. It's a free trade zone, the whole train. I see this a lot of direction. Now, for example, in Peru, with Chancay Port, they just approved in last October, a new private special economic zone regime. And of course, the World Trade Center will fit exactly, because that will be the platform to join Latin America and the Southeast countries. We are in a new world, and the new world create new environment and new free zone and new places to this disruptive international trade.
Absolutely. And Crystal, since you're looking after members, where would you really love to expand, or where's on your radar for future growth?
Ooh, yeah, right now we're seeing a lot of growth in Brazil and in India. Where we're looking ahead to the future, I think Southeast Asia especially is a growth market for us, as is many of the regions of Africa, actually. We're looking at strategically where we can grow there. So I think there's a lot of excitement for the network, and kind of where we're seeing Obviously, where trade goes, we will go. So as new trade corridors open, you're going to see more World Trade Centers. We have a number of them actually in Eastern Europe. You know, we just had new members join us from Belgrade and Sarajevo recently. We're seeing a lot of kind of opening of conversations around the World Trade Center network in those areas. So that's where to watch for us in the near future.
Great. Well, definitely keep an eye on that. I want to address a comment in the chat regarding chambers of commerce. So we've have watching us here, Holger Bingman from the International Chamber of Commerce. And just by the way, hello, Holger. I saw you recently at a forum in Zurich. So our paths are crossing here in some of these conversations. And Holger's made the point that free zones that interact well and have good relationship with chambers of commerce are the successful ones. I'd love to get a reaction from both of you to that. And do you collaborate as well with chambers of commerce, and how do you see that relationship? I'll ask Martin first.
Okay, Holger, we'll come to this webinar. Holger is a very good expert in International Chamber of Commerce and in free trade zone too. Okay, the Chamber of Commerce are a fantastic tool to promote trade, as its name said, Chamber of Commerce. And it's not local commerce, it's international commerce. And the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce, I am the president of the chapter in Customs and Trade in Colombia, make a wonderful job connecting the countries to and as arbitration field. So sometimes there are disputes in the international trade, and the ICC is one of the best known arbitration center in the world. And the information, they have a wonderful information, and I think we are a triple alliance, a World Trade Center, World Free Zone Organization, and a Free Trade Zone, and International Chamber of Commerce. And I think because we have the same objective, to share information, to analyze flows, to see for what company, what is the best place to be in any moment, for goods, for service, and for logistics.
Thank you. And Crystal, does this come into play in your day-to-day work? Are you actively in conversation with chambers of commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we have a number of chambers of commerce that are license holders. So they are World Trade Centers. Actually, they work hand in hand. Just as Martín said, you know, at the end of the day, we're all here to really connect global trade, international trade through our different ecosystems. And so we have a number of members, especially in France, that are chambers of commerce, part of the ICC. What we look for under the World Trade Center model is that reciprocity. And so really assisting other World Trade Centers and their local businesses and their investors and operators, their free trade zones, really to find those connections and facilitate trade at a faster rate.
Fantastic. And again, back on the geographies, I wanted to ask you about two areas that have been mentioned in the open chat and come to me directly as a question. One is the potential that you see in China for the World Trade Center model, and also in the Arab world or Middle East. Again, despite the current instability there, some of the world's best free zones have sort of arisen out of the region. So I'd love, Martin, you to perhaps talk a bit about how you see China and the Arab world in terms of their development for free trade zones and also World Trade Centers.
Thank you, Courtney. Pues last October, we had the World Trade Center Congress in Hainan, China. Hainan is a beautiful island. It is the Hawaii of China. And World Trade Center Hainan, one was of the speaker of the World Trade Center forum that we made there. I assist to that panel, and it was fantastic to see how the World Trade Center in China and a neighbor country like China is creating a networking around free zones. In the case of Hainan, Hainan will be the biggest free port in the world. 34,000 square kilometers is the project of Xi Jinping to compete with Hong Kong and with Singapore. But of course, bigger because 34,000 square kilometers is a big island with fantastic city and wonderful landscapes. And they are creating an artificial island like the Palm in Dubai to create amusement parks, hotels, hospital for international medical services and cruise facilities and so and so. And this is one of the examples, but maybe in China we have 12 free zone, and many of those has a special economic zone in the World Trade Center or nearby. For that reason, China is one of the countries who you can see more interaction between the special economic zones and World Trade Center. But by the way, China was closed 50 years ago. Was the closest country in the earth, and was closed for the last 500 years. Since the Black Sickness in the Middle Age, they closed the border, but Xi Jinping and Deng Xiaoping in the moment, and now they continue with many of the leaders of China, open the economy, and now is the biggest exporter in the world. But of course, there are in this moment in a regionalization process, because the trade war with the United States, China reduced the participation in the U.S. import from 21 for 14% last year. For that reason, they are more concentrated in other markets different than the U.S. in this moment.
And Crystal, is China on your radar? And also, are you sort of actively looking to expand across the Middle East as well?
Yeah, China has actually been, as a nation, kind of a long time member of ours overall. We have a number of World Trade Centers, including the China World Trade Center in Beijing, which has been around for decades now as a member of WTCA. In all, we have close to 30 World Trade Centers across China. CCPIT is a longtime partner of WTCA. I was just in China and Beijing last September for CIFTIS, which they hold annually. So China continues to be a strong corridor for us in terms of where we find World Trade Centers. I think the models there, as we spoke about earlier, is shifting. I was also in Haikou a couple of years ago. The World Trade Center Haikou hosted our regional conference of members of Asia Pacific, and we got to see where that port, that free zone would be, and kind of the development of that. When we look at where we are now in China comparatively to other places of the world, we're always looking at different models. So we go back to that flexibility thought, right? So maybe perhaps World Trade Centers are not real estate plays in China right now as much as they are moving towards like trade development, business ecosystems. Of course, real estate is a core pillar of the association, so I don't want to discount those members like World Trade Center Suzhou that are real estate plays. When we look at the other side of the conversation, looking to the Middle East and countries there, we have a number of World Trade Centers already, and we're always looking to expand. The ones that are leaders for us right now are the World Trade Center Riyadh, of course, Dubai World Trade Center that a number of people know because they go to Dubai and to those conferences and look to the Dubai World Trade Center free zone as well. We're always looking at areas. I think, again, the strongest areas of growth for us right now are those that I previously mentioned. But of course, we can't discount where trade is going from day to day.
Great. And I'd like to hear a little bit about the background and the aims of the collaboration between your company, Martín, your consultancy, and the World Trade Center Association.
Well, thank you, Courtney. This is very interesting. 2 years ago, we have a very good meetings with World Trade Center because they want that the license to be given to the free zone will be with the help of focus to understanding the possibility, the feasibility study, the new opportunity of the new international trade. For that reasons, now the license of the World Trade Center that is gave to the a free trade zone or special economic zone, we'll have the help of our organization, of Araújo Ibarra, in understanding the possibility, the kind of company, the modernization of its legislation and incentive, the infrastructure, etc. We are working with several. For example, one of the case is Santiago de los Caballeros in Dominican Republic that is going to duplicate the area that they have. Is the third oldest free zone in Dominican Republic, and it's a fantastic city because it's in the middle of the mountain. It's a hurricane-free city in the middle of the Caribbean and have a wonderful weather. And we are analyzing case by case in one of their 15 multinational what they are doing and how we can use more this disruption in international trade. And we in the same case of Santiago de los Caballeros, we are working with maybe 10 free zones around the world, helping and understanding how the World Trade Center model will help in connect. Because when you are a part of the World Trade Center Association, automatically you have maybe 300 members in 90 countries, and in that partnership is more than 1 million companies. It's like that you have an embassies around the world, and when you need another World Trade Center help you in organize a trade mission or to make contact to the one specific company, etc. It's like that's a club. You have the right to call the another World Trade Center and that program. But now, of course, around that World Trade Center Association too.
Great, thank you. And Crystal, do feel free to add to that. And I've got some incoming questions to pose to you as well from the chat.
Great. Yes, yeah. I think, I'll add, the partnership between WTCA and Araújo Ibarra really, again, we're complementary platforms. Martín and his team really have deep expertise in free trade zone design and governance. And WTCA, our World Trade Center network, provides that institutional credibility and global connectivity. And as Martín mentioned, we give the license exclusively per city. So there's an exclusivity to what we do. Not everyone can be a World Trade Center license holder with us. The pairing between our two organizations works really well because while Martín and his team have the expertise and we have the global network, we're working hand in hand day to day to really find the ways to strengthen and give long-term success to free trade zones and to World Trade Centers in tandem with each other.
Great, thank you. And it's been mentioned a little bit earlier in the conversation about some World Trade Centers wanting to become free zones. How can World Trade Centers use free zone capabilities to strengthen their role as trade development hubs rather than just real estate providers? This is a question that's come in from our audience that you may, either or both of you may want to address.
Well, one of the most amazing example is the World Trade Center Montevideo. Was the first World Trade Center as a building who became a service-free zone many years ago. And now there was opened another branch in Punta del Este that was inaugurated a few months ago. I had the opportunity to be there. It's a fantastic building with a beautiful landscape just in front of the sea. And but today you can see a project like San Luis de Potosí, 2,000 hectare projects that around the World Trade Center, but they create a complete new international trade platform for the city and the area. It's not only a building, it's a lot of buildings, it's in logistic buildings, industrial buildings, offices buildings, hotels. And this is the new advantage of the World Trade Center Free Zone program. Then the whole park will become a World Trade Center, not only one building, but even the users of the free zone can have the right to ask for the connection, ask for the information, ask for the advice, how to survive in this fantastic world that we are a very challenging world that are living today.
Thank you. And Crystal, is that what you hear from your members that are sort of going through that transition, and how do you see the benefits that they might gain.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with what Martín just said. I'll add another layer to that in terms of what the World Trade Center Network brings. We not only bring kind of reciprocity in the brand name, but our members really rely on the success of each other for a total success. So we look at kind of sharing of best practices and business connections, but also just sitting down around the table and working through the current trade environment. We'll be doing that in Philadelphia in April for our annual Global Business Forum this year. And Martín and his team will be there as well. We'll be talking with a number of free trade zones and World Trade Centers in a roundtable there. So what we do at the end of the day is really connecting our members, connecting businesses globally, as we say. Free zones work very well into that model, and where members are headed right now are really figuring out how to deal with the changing trade landscape. And I think, again, the pairing between our two ecosystems works hand in hand.
Thank you. And another question that's come in is one that is raised, very frequently when we talk about free zones. And I'll put this question to Martin about overcoming and addressing some of the negative connotations or really misperceptions that exist about free zones.
Well, as all the mechanisms, all are very good managed, but others are not. For that reasons, we in the World Free Zone Organization are working very close with the OECD and the World Customs Organization. I have the opportunity when I was vice chairman of the World Free Zone Organization to knock the doors for the first time of OECD. And we went with Samir Hamroni there to say, you want to rise the level of the international trade? We want to rise the level and security of the free trade zones around the world. And we begin to work together. And today, OECD create the branch of free zones. And now the director of that branch is a lady who used to be the director of the Latin American Free Trade Zone Association. And they create the certification of safe free zones. That means that those free zones who has this certification, the OECD is sure that its partners, its company, its procedure are very, very safe. And the globalization needs a new ethics. And I think through this certification with OECD, and we are working too very close with the World Customs Organization to be more transparent, more fluently, and more open, and especially more safe, the trade between the 5,000 free trade zones that are in 145 countries and the procedures.
Great. Thank you. Another question that's come in that I think I'd wanted to round out our conversation by speaking a little bit more specifically about the advantages of the World Trade Center model or the benefits that they might accrue. Questions come in how can World Trade Centers located in different free zones collaborate strategically to jointly leverage some of the benefits? So I'll let you answer that, Crystal, and of course also tell us anything you really want the audience to know before we adjourn about the World Trade Centers and sort of the opportunities that you are presenting.
Yeah, I think, that's a great question. I see it comes from our member in World Trade Center Trieste in Italy. That's exactly why we're launching this initiative, this partnership with Martín and his group, because we see that free trade zones are kind of a very important point for our membership. We have a number of them at this point that hold licenses with us. So we're launching a number of new programs and initiatives. Some of them will be talked about in April. A lot of them will be geared around kind of these types of webinars, but also working sessions to figure out how do you get clients into your free zone? What challenges are you addressing from day to day? And really maximizing, again, that global network that we serve. When I look ahead to the next decade, I'm really seeing that the defining quality of competitive trade is going to be trust. And so in the periods that we're serving right now of policy volatility and geopolitical tension, institutional trust reduces the friction and accelerates global trade. Free trade zones provide the structure around global trade, and global networks provide that connectivity that we're talking about. But trust is really what will allow both of those systems to function effectively. So I think ecosystems built on trusted relationships adapt more quickly to the changing landscapes. They sustain competitiveness over time, and they create that long-term value across borders.
Thank you. That's a really good and very appropriate note to strike at this moment in history. And Martín, I want to give the floor to you before we start to wrap up. Anything else you think is important that you would like to share with us?
Well, maybe I want to underline that the free zone is the pretext, is the main motive, like a leader of the country or a good businessman can try to bring new cluster and new business to his country or his city or his town. The free zone are laboratory of internationalization, and because they have a very special regime, very easy regime to create new business, allow the new companies and the new businessmen to bring this kind of the business of the future today for his country. This is the most important thing I want to share with you. And when you have the powerful or two fantastic mechanisms, World Trade Center plus free trade zone, it's easier to bring the business of the future to the present.
Absolutely. And again, perfect note. I think we may end there if everyone agrees. And I want to first of all thank you for allowing me to moderate this conversation, which is always a pleasure to hear from you, Martín and Crystal, to get to know a little bit better the World Trade Center Association and your work and your network. And I'm sure we will all see each other at upcoming conferences and stay in touch. And I would also like to second Crystal's comments that, the World Trade Centers, but also free zones globally are very much a community and a family. And I'm thinking a lot of our friends and colleagues in the Gulf states that are impacted by current events. But we know that if anything we have seen is that free zones are very resilient, and international trade ultimately also always proves to be resilient. So I have no doubt that we will have some stronger trade coming in the future and more resilient zones as well. So I'll end there if that's okay with everyone. And thank you again for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you so much.
Great. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.